Hello, and thank you for tuning in. Before we begin our discussion, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. My name is Elisa Zanola, and I'm head of events for the Fashion Scholarship Fund. As we're all very familiar with Zoom at this point, there are some great features for us to utilize. One of them is the comment box. Feel free to send comments to the panelists or your fellow attendees. And there's also the Q&A box. So we encourage you to submit any questions that come to mind, and we'll answer as many as possible during the Q&A segment of the session. And now I'd like to introduce our Executive Director, Peter Arnold.
Thanks, Elisa, and welcome class of 2021 scholars, alums, and scholar applicants to the first of this summer's masterclasses. As you know, every summer we roll out 9 weeks of programming. On Tuesdays, it's workforce preparedness and professional development. And on Thursdays, it's masterclasses. And I can think of no better first masterclass of the summer than this one, which is themed Own It, Wisdom, Magic, and the Secret to Life with Diane von Furstenberg and CHIOMA NNADI. And I'm very pleased to be joined by my friend, a woman who really needs no introduction, iconic designer, entrepreneur, author, Diane von Furstenberg. Welcome, Diane.
Hello, very nice to be here. And
Diane,
congratulations to all the graduations.
Thanks. Diane is joined for this conversation by CHIOMA NNADI, who's the editor-in-chief of Vogue.com. Thanks, CHIOMA, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great, and thank you both. We're going to record this session for any student or alum who couldn't attend live. And so I'm grateful to you both for your time today. CHIOMA, I'm going to turn the virtual mic.
What that name, CHIOMA. What a beautiful name.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Diane.
What does it mean?
It means actually good fate or good luck. So hopefully that will bring us.
I love it. I love it. It's so beautiful. I never heard of it. Beautiful.
I remember actually the first time I met you, Diane, I came to your studio and I was a young writer and I walked in and I was wearing, I think I was wearing this pleated skirt and you were so welcoming and warm and I sort of instantly understood like why you are who you are in this industry and why so many people look up to you. And so I'm so excited to be talking in front of young people. Because you were one of the first kind of people I met in the industry, and you were such a warm presence, and you're such a guiding.
I believe in encounters. Actually, I read 2 months ago, even though everybody was secluded, even though I've been in this studio for a year and a half, that doesn't mean that you can't meet people, And I read in the FT Financial Times, which is my favorite paper, I read this wonderful article about solitude and time. And it was a beautiful Nigerian woman. And I was talking to the FT at the time. They were doing a story on my book. And I said, I really love this writer. Can I have her email? So she and I have become friends. And she just visited me. She came last night. And she actually just left this room 5 minutes ago. And even though we never had seen each other, it was amazing. And the reason I'm even telling you that is because all of you, connecting and the power of connecting and the power of intimacy, and as opposed to small talk where they don't even listen to what you say, but intimacy and meeting people is magical. Anyway, so whatever.
No, it's so true. And I think it's, I was going to ask you actually a little bit about how this year has sort of changed the way your outlook on life and what also inspired you. Because I think, some of us have been very inspired, in this year. And I think you obviously have, and you were inspired to write this book. And I'd love to know how you found that where you found that inspiration.
First of all, it was very funny. When the year 2020 started like boom, with a boom, you know. The first thing I did is I went to the furthest place I could go. I went to the island, Easter Island. I had never been there. I've always wanted to go. And my daughter had gone to an incredible therapeutical, you know, spiritual center in Chile. And she said, you should do that. And I thought, oh, that's a good way to start the year. So I thought, okay, I will do that. But since I'm already there, it's still 5 hours in the plane, I want to go to Easter Island. So I went to Easter Island. I went to this retreats. And then boom, you know, I went to Paris. I got La Légion d'honneur, which is the biggest honor you could get, and Christine Lagarde gave it to me. And then I came back, and then I had the DVF award, and we did it at the Library of Congress in DC because we were giving the big prize to Ruth Ginsburg, and I didn't want her to travel. As a matter of fact, it turned out to be the last public event she did. And so it was like a very, very busy year. Then we had the international, the Women's Day, and we had 1,000 people at the studio. And then 3 days later, the world stopped, you know? And I thought, wow. And so I came here, which is my house. This is a house that I bought for my 27th birthday when I first had made my first money. And so it's been my house for a long, long time, ever since I was an adult. My children were little, my children became big, my grandchildren were little, my grandchildren became big, you know, different men came in, some stayed, some didn't, you know, lifetime, my diaries, my books, everything is here. So, and I have a beautiful garden. So if you had the garden during the pandemic, it was really, truly luxury. And so I guess that the two things that happened is that on one side, I got closer to nature than I have ever been. And on a daily basis, it's very different if you come to the country and you come on the weekend, oh yes, today. But if you go on day after day, the metamorphosis that you see on a daily basis is just incredible. It's magic. So nature, and then on the other side, we all accelerated in the virtual world. Look, we're having now a very conversation. We're doing that all day long. And so you know, you could take classes, I read my books. I mean, everything is on. So those two energies which are very different, but yet somehow now they're blending together. So I knew that, okay, the world has stopped, and the world has never stopped before. And I have never stopped before. Ever since I was an adult, I move, I go, travel, you travel for a meeting and all of that. So I said, okay, so now I'm not moving, and I don't want to say take advantage of it, because you don't want to take advantage of something bad, but I took the opportunity to reflect. And so you reflect on two ways. You reflect about your personal life, but that I have a tendency to do always, because I keep my diary, you know, every day I write my diary. So I am quite reflective on myself, but this stopping of the world forced me to take the inventory and think about my business, my brand, and the business model. And everything had, you know, I've had a very long career. In 2 years, it'll be 50 years. So, and I've had huge success when I was really, really young, and then mistakes, and then I sold, and then the brand was nothing, and then I start again, and, you know, all kinds of ups and downs, because it doesn't matter for anyone Nothing goes just up, up, up. You go through all kinds of things. And when you have a lot of success is also the time that, you know, maybe the world thinks you are at the top, but you yourself know that it's not really that true, because you know all the problems you may be having. And just the same way, when everybody think, oh, she's a has-been, it's over. That may not be true either, because you also know that you're working on things. So all of these things. So I thought, okay, this is the opportunity. The world has stopped to this fashion the way it is, those outlet stores, those malls, or this, that, doesn't make any sense anymore. And so I took some very drastic, I mean, I really owned it, actually. And so that helped. So that's me, what I did during the year. Then at the same time, this publisher, Phaedon, had come to me because I had started this movement called In Charge. Because when people ask me, what did you want to do when you were growing up? I said, well, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew the kind of woman I wanted to be. I wanted to be a woman in charge. Then later, when people would say, who are you? Who is the DVF woman? Who are you dressing for? I would say, the woman in charge. Because that woman that I was lucky enough to become so early, I became that woman at age 28. At 28, I already had 2 children. I was already separated. I already had this house, and I had a big business. So I was way ahead, right? And of course, then things don't stay like that, but nevertheless. So that woman at 28 that I had become, that is my ideal woman. And I still design for that woman. Even though I am an old woman, that 28-year-old woman is still inside me. So I understand that. So anyway, so now that I'm much older, I like to give advice, blah, 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 blah. So the In Charge had been this umbrella. So the In Charge, I created this movement, and I say in charge, to be in charge is not aggressive, and it's not aggressive towards men. What it is a commitment to who we are. We own our imperfection, they become our assets. We own our vulnerability, we turn it into strength, right? So originally, the book was going to be called In Charge, and they say, we do so well with this self-help book, and people quote you all the time, and blah, blah, blah. I said, okay. So then I started to write this book, In Charge, and 2 things. First of all, I realized that everything that I was talking about that was in charge brought you back to own it. And then I thought, maybe it should be called Own It. And then of course, I was going to write it like a normal book in prose. And the first sentence was going to be, we cannot choose our parents, right? So if you open a book and you see, we cannot choose our parents, you immediately say, yeah, that's true. But that is really the first realization that you have to own it, right? And then, but then as I was writing it in prose, I kept on thinking it was boring. And not boring, but condescending. And I love to give advice, but I don't like to sound condescending, because as a child, I couldn't bear people who were condescending. So then I took a big book, I have all these great books, and I started to write. Every page had a letter, A, B, C, and I wrote the words that matter to me and the words that don't matter, or the words that I don't like. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to call this book Own It, and I'm going to do it like a dictionary. And so I picked 268 words. And then I wrote either a very short definition, or sometimes it's an anecdote, but everything goes back to own it, which is the secret to life, which can apply to children. It can apply if you're diagnosed. with a disease. It can apply if your husband leaves you. It can apply if you fail your exam. It can apply to anything. But owning it is the first step of taking responsibility. And so that's it. So that's my story. So that's what I did during the pandemic. I stayed in this room, which thankful is very large. And in this room, I did a lot of thinking, a lot of writing, a lot of reading, a lot of watching movies, listening to books. And actually, it's been an amazing year.
Well, I love what you said about not the opening line about not being able to sort of choose your parents. I mean, in Buddhism, they believe that you do. And I do know that you have.
Oh, you do?
Apparently that you choose. I've always heard that in Buddhism, you believe that you choose your parents. And I think your mother has been such a, to take a step back before we dive into the book, your mother has been such a pillar of strength in your life, as a Holocaust survivor, as someone who inspired you from the beginning. How would you say your upbringing informed the way your outlook on the world?
Okay, so my mother was absolutely, my mother's story explains who I am. Now, because she was very strong for the longest time, I wouldn't accept that. But now she's gone for 20 years already. And so my mother was a young woman when she got arrested in occupied Belgium, and she went to Auschwitz. She spent 13 months in concentration camp, in slave labor. She was working, so that's why she didn't die. And when she, at the end of the 13 months, she did the death march and the whole thing. She weighed 49 pounds. Something ridiculous. she was very skinny, but she survived. She went back home in Belgium. Her parents could not believe that she wasn't there. Nobody could believe it. And if her mother fed her like a little bird every 10 minutes. She always used to say that she felt she was, being blown up like a balloon. And after 6 months, her fiance, who had been hiding in Belgium, in Switzerland, came back. They got married. And the doctor said to her, okay, you can get married, but you can in no way have a child, because you will not make it and your child will not be normal. And sure enough, I was born 12 months later. And maybe you could say I was not normal, but anyway, so obviously, it's like I was a miracle. She used to say, God saved me so that I can give you life. By giving you life, you gave me my life back. You are my torch of freedom. So as a little girl, to be born with a torch of freedom in your hand could be a little heavy, but that's where I came. And also, but my mother would not allow me to blame, to complain, never be a victim, and no matter what, no fear. So if I was afraid of the dark, she locked me in the dark closet. Today she would get arrested and lose my custody. But as a result, when you are in the dark for 10 minutes, one, it doesn't stay dark. And two, what is there to be afraid of? So I owe to my mother this enormous appetite and appetite for life and respect for life and love of life. I got that from her for sure. And also, she never told me be careful. She always pushed me ahead. She sent me to boarding school very early. She wanted me to do my own life. And in many ways, I became her revenge, and so it's a very nice story.
Wow, she sounds incredible.
She was.
Diane, I think it's impossible to talk about you or, your impact on the fashion industry without talking about that dress. And I'm talking about the wrap dress, the iconic wrap dress that you created in 1974. When you made it, I mean, did you realize the impact it would have, the power we've had, and how it would resonate with generations and generations of women?
Of course not. I mean, not at all. I mean, not at all. I mean, it's, I think we should talk about the doors, because, we're talking to an audience of people who are starting life, right? And so when you start life, you don't know what your door is, and what I would like to say, and I mentioned that under the word door, is that you have so many doors in front of you, and you have to experiment and push and find out. And believe me, my door was the least, even though I had a glamorous life after, the pushing that door of that print factory in Como was the least glamorous door I could possibly push. And I didn't know it was going to matter so much when I went there and I learned about prints and printing and that and that. I just looked at the guy, the owner had a crush on me, and he said, come and watch, the back of fashion. And he had a printing factory where he printed scarves, beautiful silk scarves for Gucci, Ferragamo, Valentino, everybody. And so I learned about, how you buy illustration, how you put it in repeat. Then you worked with a colorist. And the people in those factories, the colorists, they were colorists. The father was a colorist. The grandfather was a colorist. So it was truly a craft. So that was really interesting. Not did I ever think that I would have used for any of that, but it was very interesting. And then the man, he needed, because he was doing well with his business, he needed more space. And there was an empty factory next door, and they had gone out of business because they were making stockings. And of course, the pantyhose had just been invented, and so nobody bought stockings anymore. I'm sure none of your students know what a stocking is. A stocking is, well, forget it, don't worry. Anyway, so when he got and visited the factory, there were all these knitting machines these tubular knitting machines that knitted the stockings. And he said, what could we do with these machines? And so he called the yarn manufacturers like DuPont, Znia-Viscol, people who make yarns. And he experimented this machine with thicker yarn. And that's how he invented this jersey fabric. So jersey fabric, and then he said, oh, I could print on this jersey fabric, and I could print T-shirts. And because T-shirt also it didn't exist in a woman's wardrobe. A T-shirt originally was an undergarment for a man, but it wasn't, but Brigitte Bardot and Saint-Tropez, the colorful T-shirt had just been created. So that's how it started. Anyway, so then my mother, for my birthday, gave me a ticket to go and visit my boyfriend in New York. So I come to New York, 21 years old, and he was a good-looking aristocrat. He was a prince. So you can imagine in New York, everybody invited him. And so because I was his girlfriend, who they rather not see, but anyway, all these young designers at the time, Giorgio Santangelo and Stephen Burrows and Halston, all those people invited me, and they wanted me to give me clothes, and I went to their showroom, and so I saw all these new clothes. A lot of them were in Jersey, especially Stephen Burrows and Giorgio Santangelo. So when my vacation was finished and I had to go back to work, all I could think about is, how am I going to go back to New York? How am I going to manage to go back to New York? And when I arrived in Italy and I went to the factory, all of a sudden I saw, oh, this is my door. I am going to convince them, I'm going to ask them if I can make some samples here that I will sell in America. That's how it started. Wow. So that was my door. I forget what was the wrap dress. And so first it was T-shirt dresses, shirt dresses, and then I had a little wrap top. that was inspired by what dancers wear. You know, when they warm up, they wear these little kashkir, these little wrap top sweaters, really. And so that's what inspired it. And I had that with a matching skirt, and that did really, really well. And so I came back. In between, I got married, I got pregnant. I was pregnant all the time. And I went back and I said, let's try to make this wrap top into a dress. And that was the wrap dress. And I had no idea. But do you know that within 2 years, I was making 25,000 wrap dresses a week.
What? Wow. Wow. That's like the equivalent of viral these days.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of 50,000 sleeves. Anyway, so that's the story. So yes, I made the wrap dress, yes, but the truth is the wrap dress made me, because it gave me the confidence, it gave me a confidence that I translated to other women, and the more confident I was, the more confident I was making them, and I would go and travel around and wrap them around their little and voilà.
Yeah, so essentially it gave you the confidence to own it.
It gave me the confidence to own it, and it gave me the confidence because all of a sudden I could pay my bills and I could buy my house and I could be independent. And then because I am, you see, just the way you said before you started, you were a young girl and I was apparently nice to you. And I guess that, you know, I had a salesman, he would ship me everywhere doing personal appearances in every city in America. I mean, you know, Philadelphia, Oklahoma, I mean, Palm Beach, everywhere. For me, it was all exotic. But I do like the contact. And so the more confident I was, the more confident I made others. And my dresses and my fashion is all about confidence. I mean, DVF is, we put the woman first before the fashion, because fashion is the zeitgeist, right? Fashion is what's happening in the world. Fashion is in movies, fashion is in food, fashion is in architecture, fashion is in language. Fashion is, you know, it reflects the moment. But for me, what was important is the woman, to be that woman who could be in and out, who could dress up. My clothes are about collectibles. It's your personality, it's the personality of the woman that comes. And then, you know, you just boom, boom, and you're always ready, and you have a tiny little bag, and it doesn't weigh very much, and you never ridicule, and you come out. Because the woman is, three things make a woman's beauty: the eye contact, the smile, and the body language. And the body language is about confidence and about, how do I say? It's about attitude, because you can have a body language under an abaya, you know, a Middle Eastern dress. So it's not like the body language necessarily have to be wearing a tight alaya dress. Of course it is, but not only.
I love that. I actually need to write that down so I remember it. Is that such
eye contact? That's what I tell models always. Eye contact, smile. I mean, every time I did a fashion show, I had to repeat so many times, smile. And they say, really? Nobody ever wants us to smile. I say, no, I want you to smile. And body language.
And thank goodness that the smile is returning now that we can sometimes take off our masks.
Right. That's right. That's right. That was also, I mean, you know, that was something that, but, you know, we just needed to think. Maybe the world needs, you know, society is changing. The world is changing. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. And speaking of your mantra, I'd love to know if you could identify just a few moments in your life where this confidence and this idea of owning it kind of got you through pivotal moments in your life.
Oh my God! Well, just this pandemic, you know, in my business, I had to close most of my stores. I had to do so many difficult things. I just had to, and you just have to do it. I mean, and then you discover that you find new ways, and then you could be more modern. And now it's like having a startup with a huge library, with a huge. It's actually very exciting. So, but you know, but it's also little things. It's also little things. So you were planning a big party outside, and it's raining. Okay, own it, you know, and all of a sudden you all go inside, and it may look less prepared, but it may be more fun.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I think it's micro and macro. You sort of have to take that into every aspect of your life.
I mean, my family now, if I say any more own it, I think they will kill me. But it works for everything, and it works for anyone at any age. And what it is just accept it and do the best you can with it.
Agree. There are so many highlights in the book. I wanted to read out one that I really love, under M, which is magic, which is one of my favorite words. Magic. We all have a magic wand, and the more we use it, the more powerful it becomes. I do think our magic wand works best when we do good for others.
That's true.
Yes, very true. And since doing good almost always comes back to us, it is fair to say that our magic wand can become a boomerang. And I love that idea.
But it's true. It's so true. So I have this little trick, this little game. Every morning, amongst the first email that I do, I make sure that I do 2 emails that do not benefit me at all, where I connect people. And with email, it's so good because you don't have to leave a message. You don't have to do that. You don't disturb anybody. They will open it when they have the time. And you can introduce this person to that person that they would have never, ever, ever met. And you create magic. And I did this. I did a big one this morning. A big one.
Tell us what it is, or is it secret?
No, it's just a writer with a big agent.
Great. I hope magic comes from it.
I think it will.
I think you've been such an amazing advocate, and empathy and compassion are so much part of your vocabulary as well, and empowering women. And I think especially in this moment when we all need to be supporting women in the industry and supporting an idea of diversity and making sure that we're making room for other women and making room for different kinds of women. How do you feel about where fashion is right now in that sense, and women being in charge?
Well, I love I personally really like the diversity. I identify with it because, when my parents were both refugees of some kind, I was in Belgium in school where everybody had blonde, straight hair with bangs. And I had, short little brown curly hair. I looked like no one. So I but I didn't care about belonging in a weird way. I don't know why. But I love the diversity. I relate everything to nature, I relate everything to nature. And in nature, everything is so diverse and yet blends together, So, and as far as where's fashion, Well, you know, we all, I mean, I don't know when we're going to go back wearing high heels, frankly.
I think
You
everyone's
know,
ready for high heels, Diane. I'm seeing more of them.
I am. Well, yeah, no, I listen, I've worn high heels all my life. You know, this woman I wanted to be was a woman that would go in and out of airports with huge high heels. But there is an attitude, I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's like the, you know, the gay 20s or whatever, that they all overdress. But I think for me, you know, for me, clothes is really about, is what you collect. And as I told you, this therapy that I did with this book and the therapy I did with my brand, I realized that, you know, everybody talks about sustainability. I said, yes, okay. Well, but you know what? If you go to any vintage store in any city in the world, you will find wrap dresses, and you will find wrap dresses that sometimes have already been in a vintage store 3 times, that have already covered 3 generations, and they're still in great shape, and people still want them. They're more expensive than they were then. And so that's sustainable, right? Also, the idea that, you know, because of my beginning, I am in the business of prints, right? I have, I don't know, I have a library of 15,000 prints. I mean, a bank of, you know, 200 colors. So I just said, okay, so stand for what you are. And it's about collectibles, you know, and it's about keeping the collectibles and keeping them in your closet. The thing with DVF is that people don't throw it away. They hold to it, and even if they can't fit it, you know. And so I like the idea of collectibles because, again, I go back to nature. You know, there's a question of mood, right? So I believe in the calendar, especially women. I mean, we have our period every month, so we are part of a calendar. You know, every month there's a new moon. Every month there's a full moon. You know, and then there's spring, and then spring, the little flowers there. Yes, oh, I want blue. Why do you want blue? You just do. You know, I mean, it's so I like the following all of that. And so, strangely enough, even though I'm old, and even though I don't want to do this anymore, and even though blah blah, I mean, it's incredibly inspired at the moment because I feel like I know how it all should kind of be. So what I do at this time is I'm creating this huge vault with all of their archives, with all the comments, and trying to have like a super large masterclass, and then have young people, you know, do it their way, knowing what the codes are.
Well, I think on that note, I think we may be coming up to questions, and I think maybe this is the right moment. Diane, it was such a wonderful pleasure to speak to you, but I want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to ask questions as well.
Okay.
Thanks, CHIOMA, and thanks, Diane. I've got a few that are, and more are coming in. I'll start with a sort of a big question from Kevin. Hello, Ms. von Furstenberg. In your opinion, what is the fashion designer's true role? What is their major job in the fashion complex, if not the world?
I think the fashion designer's role is to create tools, to create things that will make a woman or a man feel better about themselves. Yeah, create uniforms that are appealing. That's the way I think that's the role of, you know, people talk about art and design. Art is about emotion. Design is utilitarian. And I personally think that the utilitarian aspect is the best design because it has a reason. It's because, you know, or even how you use fabric. if you use a woven fabric in bias, you automatically give that fabric flexibility, right? So it's using the utilitarian part of everything, movement and everything, that will create good design.
Okay, thanks for that. This question from Ashley. I'm currently a senior and I'm a design major. My dream is to one day have my own brand. Do you feel it's important to first start by working for another designer to gain experience, or do you recommend taking the leap to start my own label as soon as I graduate?
There is no rule. I mean, I didn't even think I wanted to be a designer when I made my first dresses. I just thought, oh, I make some samples, I sell them in America. I didn't even think I would put my name into it. But if you studied fashion and that, it's probably good to go and work for someone that you actually like, that you think that you can learn things from.
Okay, fair enough. This question from Alexis to both of you. What was the greatest challenge you both faced during your careers to date?
To date?
Yes.
Okay, Chima, you say yours.
Biggest challenge, I think, wow. I do think that, you know, suddenly the world stopping and having to reorient ourselves, you know, in a world where we're not going to the office, we're not meeting, we're not able to brainstorm in a sort of a loose, create the way that creative people do, was extremely challenging. But I think, you know, similarly to Diane, we learned to sort of make that moment, that challenging moment, into something that really helped, you know, inspire us and really helped spark creative solutions, you know. And I think that to me was the biggest challenge, and overcoming that and figuring out new ways of working and new ways of ideating, and sort of adjusting to this world, or how we dress, how we live, how we, you know, communicate with one another, how we connect. I really think that living through this moment has been obviously extremely difficult, but I think it's been also, we're living through history that I think, you know, that will affect us for generations to come. So I really wanted to be present in this moment to sort of understand and to be able to look back and reflect and think about how, you know, what our creative output was in this moment too. You know, I think that was very important to me, and continues to be, because things are evolving. We're definitely like, this is not something that's suddenly going to disappear. This is going to change our lives.
No. So the biggest challenge I had sold my company in 1983 or something, and it was all licensed, so I had no control of it. I went to Paris. In Paris, I started a publishing house, so I thought fashion was finished for me. And then 5 years later, I came back. I missed my children. I missed my house. The love affair I was having in Paris was finished. So I came back. And when I came back, I realized that, that my identity was so much linked and was so much part of what my work was. And I'd lost my brand, and it was really in a bad place. I mean, it was really bad. Discount stores, it was bad. And so those few years where I had to digest that and gradually take it back, and I eventually took it back. That was a very hard moment for me in my career. And as a matter of fact, I even got a cancer at the base of my tongue. And somehow I think it's because I couldn't express myself. So that was a tough moment. But, you know, I owned it. And then you enrich from it. You learn from it. And then when you go and speak to students, you could talk about it. And you know, what is most inspiring when you do talk to people is not talk about your success. What is most inspiring is to talk about your failures, or talk about your insecurities or your vulnerabilities, because that's what people will relate to.
This question from Hannah Diane, you mentioned today that you launched your business 50 years ago. What do you attribute to your brand's incredible staying power? How do you remain relevant in an ever-changing world?
I mean, that's not the story of the brand, that's the story of me. How do you stay relevant? By loving life, by being curious, by, you know, having hundreds of books next to me, by meeting people I don't know, by finding out about AI, about being curious, and about, you know, understanding what's happening to the world, and reading and learning and questioning, and that's how you stay relevant.
Got it. A question for you both from Jacob. As a young designer building my brand, what is the one thing you both would recommend doing to make myself stand out within a crowded space?
Okay, first of all, don't call it your brand before it exists. I mean, I didn't use the word brand until I had 20 years. But of course, now brand is used very much. And I didn't mean to insult you. But I just think, you know, think about, it's all about searching the DNA. Searching the DNA of what you want to create. Does it exist? The chances is it does exist, but how can you bring it, make it new, fresh? What do you stand for? Those are the questions that I think are important to answer.
Nice. Kim, anything you want to add to that?
I mean, it's difficult because Diane, I feel like, has such a wealth of experience. I'm still learning.
No, but you see the other side, you know. I mean, you're both, so you see the other side. For example, I could tell you it's someone like you who made it happen for me, because I walked in Diana Breland's office, and Diana Breland was a high priestess of fashion, very intimidating. I walked into her office and they give me a rack. So I empty my suitcase and I put the dresses on the rack. And in walked in this woman with a huge long cigarette holder, red nails, red lips, lacquered hair. And the first thing she does is she lifts my chin and she said, chin up. And I said, oh my God, this is not sound. And then she had two young girls, two models who were there. One was Lulu de la Falaise and the other one, Pat Cleveland. They were there. And she said, try girls, try. So the girls tried the dresses and she went in, oh, wonderful. It's so clever, so simple. Ba, 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 ba. Lots of exclamation. And then poof, I find myself outside the office, packing the dresses back in. And Mrs. Breland's assistant was a woman called Keisha. And Keisha looked at me and she said, you know, I think she's going to help you. I think we'll photograph it. I said, but what do I do now? And she said, well, soon is going to be market week. So you should take a room in a hotel and show your clothes. But I say, what hotel? And she said, well, what is now the Peninsula Hotel, but at the time it was Gotham Hotel. That's where California brands show their show. So you should take a room there because then there will be traffic. All these things I would have never thought about. And then she said, you should list yourself. How will people know? List yourself in the fashion calendar and take a little ad in Women's Wear Daily. And I said to Keisha, can I use your phone? And in front of Keisha, I listed myself in the fashion calendar. I booked a room in the hotel. And that's how it happened. So you know very well how people start.
I do. And I do think, you know, there's another word in your book that I love, mentor. And I do think sort of learning and listening and having someone you can actually look up to and come to when you have questions when you're starting out is really important. And I think I've I've really benefited from having really great mentors in my career.
Okay, let me read. Let me read what I wrote for mentor. I like to think that mentors give us keys. Each key can open something, but in ourselves, we have the master key that can open everything. That's a good one.
Yeah, I love that one.
Nice. This question, Diane, from Cecily. In your autobiography, you mentioned that you didn't dare call yourself a designer for many years, despite the success of your wrap dress. How did you manage to internalize this sense of imposter syndrome?
Yeah, well, I didn't think about imposters, although I love imposters in books and movies. But it's true, I didn't call myself a designer. But I mean, you know, I didn't call Barry my husband until I was married 10 years already. I mean, it takes me a while to assess it. But it is true for the longest time. Oh, now when they call me philanthropist, I think it's so weird. But I guess all of it is true. But I mean, listen, the truth is I am a designer. I did make that dress. I actually made that dress on the cutting, with the pattern maker on this factory. So I made that dress, and that dress happens to be the most successful dress ever. So yes, I deserve the title.
Fair enough. This question from Angelina. Hello, Ms. von Furstenberg. Thank you for such insightful thoughts today. What would be a good piece of advice on how to deal with failures even after owning them?
Okay, first of all, failures are lessons. Very often you go in one direction and it fails. And because it fails, you turn around and you do it differently or something else. And that thing is a success. So you have to never swim against the river. You have to go with the flow. And of course, you should dream, you should have intentions, you should work for your dream and all of that. But every obstacle is a teaching. Everything that goes wrong is you're supposed to learn something. So don't look at it as, oh, I'm a failure. No, it's not like that. It's like, okay, that allows me to go somewhere else. See it as an opening. When you fail something, think, okay, tomorrow is the first day of the rest of my life.
Nice. Thanks for that, Diane. I think we have time for maybe one more. And CHIOMA, there's a question to you from Danielle. CHIOMA, as a person of color, seeing your appointment as editor-in-chief of Vogue.com last year was such a meaningful moment for me. Can you talk about any barriers to entry that you may have felt when starting out in your career and how you overcame those challenges?
Yeah, I can actually. Yeah, I mean, it was very intimidating. I remember going into my first job as a features assistant on a big newspaper in the UK. And I realized that the only other person of color in the building was someone I went to college with. And that there were three newspapers in the entire building. And so for me, it was really about having the courage to sort of find my voice and not feel and understand that my perspective really mattered. And it was obviously different to my colleagues, and understand that you are kind of a product of your environment, and you're a product, and the way that you see the world is so important. And understanding that your power is really your perspective, especially in fashion. And I feel really encouraged now that we have so many more points of view in fashion, because that's what makes a rich and vibrant culture. And yes, but it was very challenging, and in the beginning, I would definitely say. But and I'm thankful to the people who are able to be really supportive, because without support you can't succeed. And that's what I've really have come to understand, that helping to support and make space for other voices is so important, because without that support, talented people can't succeed. So,
But isn't the biggest support come from yourself?
Diane, of course, the pearls of wisdom. Yes, yes. But I think as
Because so of course, no, of course, the support of people is very much, but the strength is inside you.
But
The
realize
strength.
that sometimes takes someone else to tell you have everything
Sure.
you need.
Sure.
And I think as a young woman, I needed someone to say, hey, you have everything you need to succeed. Go away and do it. And every time I've come to a crossroads or a pivotal moment in career, I've been lucky enough to have a conversation with someone I trust enough to say, hey, should I do this? What do you think? And we always have everything we need, but sometimes we forget that. And I think being reminded by people who we trust is like super important. And especially as women to feel empowered, we don't necessarily, and especially as women of color, like we need those things, and we need those moments, and we need a community. And I was also, as I've gotten older, I've also managed to make connections with other women of color and having that community and be able to say, hey, someone who really understands, and speak to someone who understands what it means to be in an industry so represented.
Nice. Thanks for that, CHIOMA. Diane, we're about to sign off, but I wonder if you have any last words of advice or guidance for this audience of students, recent graduates just starting out.
Well, I just want to wish you all a very good life. I think that you are graduated at a very interesting moment, that the world stopped, that everybody had to be reflective. So a lot of the things that you could have learned a few years ago may not be relevant anymore, but you were lucky in the sense that your last year was the year of the change, and therefore you will take that in consideration. And so it may not have been pleasant, you may have been stuck in your apartment, but my advice would be take that, take that the world can change like that, take that as a lesson to try to make sense and think about the present and the future and how much society has changed.
Fantastic. Thank you both. As expected, that was wonderful and very inspiring, I know, to our students and our recent grads and to me. So Diane, thank you for your time and your wisdom, and CHIOMA, thank you so much for everything you shared. Have a great summer, you two. Thank you for
Thank you very much, CHIOMA. See you soon.
See you soon in person, I hope.
Okay, bye. Peter, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.